The modern world runs on the sea. Global commerce and the projection of power all depend on vast fleets. China now stands as the undisputed leader in global shipbuilding. The world's supply chains increasingly originate from a single nation. This is the result of a deliberate, long-term strategy. China focused on heavy industry, recognizing control over maritime trade as a cornerstone of power. China constructs over 50% of the world's new commercial ships. Control over shipbuilding is about influencing trade routes and building lasting economic relationships. China has built an unseen empire on the waves. China dominates global shipbuilding. In 2023, they produced over half of the world's new commercial shipping. For every 2 ships launched, 1 was Chinese-built. The US, once a shipbuilding powerhouse, now accounts for a tiny fraction of global output. Chinese yards launch massive container ships, while American yards produce smaller vessels. China secured 62% of new global ship orders last year, ensuring future dominance. This dominance fuels reinvestment in research and automation. It's a tale of 2 shipyards, one thriving, the other fading. China's rise in shipbuilding wasn't accidental. It was a calculated campaign of state intervention, meticulously engineered through subsidies designed to undercut global competitors. Between 2006 and 2013, China deployed an estimated $91 billion in direct and indirect subsidies. This lowered production costs, giving Chinese yards an insurmountable price advantage. This priced many European, Japanese, and Korean shipyards out of entire market segments. This allowed China to capture immense market share and move into more sophisticated markets. Beijing viewed shipbuilding as a critical national asset for economic security, global influence, and military power. The $91 billion investment was a down payment on global maritime leadership. The strategy behind China's shipbuilding hegemony extends far beyond the shipyard gates. It is not enough to simply build the cheapest ships. A truly dominant power must also ensure that customers have the means to purchase them. Recognizing this, China has integrated its industrial policy with a sophisticated financial strategy. State-backed banks and financing programs have become a crucial tool in this endeavor, providing low-interest loans and favorable financing terms to countries and companies that might otherwise be unable to afford new vessels. This financial muscle adds another layer to China's competitive advantage, transforming it from a mere manufacturer into a full-service maritime partner. Since the year 2000, Chinese state institutions have provided over $10 billion in financing programs specifically designed to help low- and middle-income countries purchase Chinese-built vessels. These are not standard commercial loans. They often come with longer repayment periods, lower interest rates, and fewer conditions than those offered by Western financial institutions. For a developing nation in Africa or Latin America looking to expand its merchant marine or fishing fleet, such an offer is incredibly attractive. It provides access to modern, capable ships that would otherwise be out of reach, all while building a strong economic and political relationship with Beijing. This is the true scale of China's shipbuilding power. It is a vertically integrated system of influence. First, state subsidies lower the cost of the ship itself, making it the most competitive product on the market. Second, state-backed financing makes the purchase possible, removing financial barriers for customers. The result is a self-reinforcing cycle. A country that buys a Chinese ship with a Chinese loan is more likely to turn to China for future maritime needs, including port construction, maintenance services, and crew training. Each vessel sold becomes a node in a growing global network of economic and political dependency, with China at its center. This strategy effectively embeds Chinese influence across the globe. It is a quiet form of power projection, less overt than a military base but in many ways more enduring. By becoming the indispensable partner for maritime development, China gains leverage in international forums, secures access to resources, and builds goodwill that can be translated into diplomatic support. The ships are more than just steel hulls. They are ambassadors of Chinese industry, finance, and foreign policy. They sail the world's oceans not only as carriers of goods, but as symbols of a new global order being financed and built by Beijing. The consequences of this global shift in shipbuilding power are now coming into sharp focus for the United States. For decades, America has relied on its unrivaled naval supremacy and its position at the heart of the global financial system to secure its interests. However, the foundation of that power, a robust domestic industrial base, has been allowed to erode. The current state of American shipbuilding is not just a commercial issue, it is a critical national security vulnerability. A nation that cannot build the ships it needs for commerce is also a nation that will struggle to build and maintain the navy it needs to defend itself and its allies. The numbers are a stark wake-up call. China's annual commercial output of over 32 million deadweight tons is staggering, but its naval shipbuilding capacity is equally formidable. Chinese shipyards are now producing advanced warships, from destroyers and frigates to massive amphibious assault ships, at a rate that outpaces the United States several times over. This industrial capacity gives the People's Liberation Army Navy, or PLAN, the ability to rapidly expand and modernize its fleet, challenging America's long-standing dominance in key strategic waterways like the Western Pacific. The United States Navy, in contrast, faces a shrinking fleet and struggles with maintenance backlogs, partly due to limited capacity in its own domestic shipyards. This challenge is not just about the number of ships, it is also about the industrial ecosystem that supports them. A healthy shipbuilding industry requires a vast network of suppliers, skilled labor, and specialized engineering talent. China has spent decades cultivating this ecosystem, while America has seen its own shrink. The United States has lost generations of skilled welders, naval architects, and marine engineers. Rebuilding this human capital and the associated supply chains is a monumental task that will take decades and require sustained investment and political will. It is a challenge that goes far beyond simply allocating more funding. It requires a fundamental rethinking of national industrial strategy. Therefore, the story of China's shipbuilding dominance is inextricably linked to the story of America's industrial decline. Understanding the scale of the problem is the essential first step toward formulating a response. The United States must now confront a difficult truth. It has fallen dangerously behind in a foundational industry. The path forward is uncertain and fraught with challenges. Can America reverse this trend? Can it rebuild its shipyards, retrain its workforce, and compete in the 21st century maritime arena? This documentary will investigate the plans being put forth and ask the critical question: is it too late for America to catch up? To comprehend China's shipbuilding scale, we must look at the physical reality. Over 32 million deadweight tons represents an immense fleet. This reinforces China's grip on global trade with a continuous stream of new vessels. Chinese shipyards are the primary source for the vessels that make modern life possible. Chinese yards have systematically moved up the value chain, producing complex vessels like LNG carriers. China has demonstrated that its shipbuilding prowess is about quality and technological sophistication. Shipyards invest heavily in automation, accelerating production. This solidifies its competitive edge. If global trade expands, it will be carried on ships built in China. This gives Beijing leverage over the global economy. China's shipbuilding prowess is exemplified by its construction of ultra-large container vessels, ULCVs. These metal islands, some longer than the Eiffel Tower, can carry over 24,000 TEUs. Building these megaships requires advanced infrastructure, massive dry docks, and coordinated supply chains, capabilities largely concentrated in Chinese shipyards. China also leads in building VLCCs and Valemax ore carriers, essential for securing its energy and raw material supply chains. In contrast, the US lacks the capacity to build such vessels, relying on foreign-built ships for its international trade. This highlights a significant capacity gap, with China dominating the construction of the world's largest and most efficient ships. China's shipbuilding power extends beyond the commercial sector. Military-civil fusion deliberately integrates commercial shipbuilding with naval modernization. State-owned enterprises construct both commercial ships and warships for the People's Liberation Army Navy, PLAN. This creates immense flexibility and scale. Skills and technologies developed for commercial projects rapidly support military requirements, and vice versa. This fusion is evident in the speed and scale of China's naval expansion. China has been commissioning new warships rapidly. China is also building dual-use commercial vessels. This creates a massive reserve fleet, dramatically expanding the plan's logistical and amphibious lift capacity. This integrated approach presents a profound challenge to the United States and its allies. China leverages its entire industrial might. It is a strategic depth that the United States currently cannot replicate, fueling one of the most rapid naval expansions in modern history. While the scale of production is staggering, it is the rapid technological advancement within Chinese shipbuilding that signals its long-term, systemic dominance. For years, Western observers dismissed Chinese yards as mere assemblers of foreign designs, reliant on imported components for critical systems. That era is definitively over. Through massive investment in research and development, strategic acquisitions of foreign technology companies, and a relentless focus on domestic innovation, China is now at the cutting edge of maritime technology. This extends from advanced hull designs that improve fuel efficiency to the development of smart ships equipped with autonomous navigation and predictive maintenance systems. A prime example of this technological leap is in the construction of green and sustainable vessels. As global shipping faces increasing pressure to decarbonize, China has positioned itself as the world's leading builder of ships powered by alternative fuels like liquefied natural gas, methanol, and even ammonia. Building these vessels requires specialized expertise in cryogenic storage, dual-fuel engine technology, and complex safety systems. Chinese shipyards, backed by state-funded research initiatives, have mastered these technologies and are now capturing the majority of orders for the next generation of eco-friendly ships. They are not just building for today's market, they are building the fleet of tomorrow. This technological prowess is also evident in the digitalization of the shipbuilding process itself. Major Chinese shipyards have implemented smart shipyard concepts, integrating 5G networks, the Internet of Things, and artificial intelligence into every stage of production. Automated welding robots work with superhuman precision. Digital twin models simulate the entire construction process to identify and solve problems before they occur, and integrated management systems track every component from the steel plate to the final installation. This high level of digitalization not only accelerates production and reduces costs, but also significantly improves the quality and consistency of the final product, further widening the gap with less automated competitors. Furthermore, China is becoming increasingly self-sufficient in the production of high-value marine equipment, the complex systems that represent a significant portion of a ship's total cost. This includes main engines, propulsion systems, navigation bridges, and cargo handling equipment. Companies like China State Shipbuilding Corporation or CSSC have invested heavily in developing their own proprietary designs, reducing their reliance on European and Korean suppliers. This vertical integration gives them greater control over their supply chain, protects them from external geopolitical pressures, and allows them to capture more of the value from each ship they build. The message is clear. China is no longer just assembling ships, it is mastering and innovating every technology that goes into them. China's shipbuilding dominance is enabled by its financial power and state-led strategy. State-owned banks like the Export-Import Bank of China have become major maritime lenders. They provide capital for global shipping companies to acquire new vessels, provided they are built in Chinese yards. The attractive financing packages serve a dual purpose. First, they steer international customers towards Chinese shipyards. Second, this financing extends China's geopolitical and economic influence. Vessel financing is a key component of the Belt and Road Initiative. This embeds Chinese influence deep into recipient nations' economies. This de-risks the Chinese shipbuilding industry, allowing for long-term planning and sustained investment. This integrated system is the financial engine that powers China's global maritime reach. Underpinning China's vast shipyards is its human capital. The scale of China's shipbuilding industry is supported by a workforce of over 1 million people, including welders, pipefitters, engineers, and project managers. This allows shipyards to run multiple shifts and take on large projects without labor shortages. China prioritizes vocational training, producing qualified workers. In contrast, the U.S. shipbuilding workforce has declined. Rebuilding this human industrial base is a difficult challenge. This represents a significant advantage for China. This human scale creates a formidable dominance. To understand the challenge facing the United States, we must journey back to when American shipyards were the envy of the world. During World War II, these yards performed a feat of production that has never been equaled. Today, many of those same shipyards are mere shadows of their former selves. The decline of the American commercial shipbuilding industry was a slow decay. Following the war, other nations began to rebuild their industries with more modern equipment. The United States allowed its commercial shipbuilding sector to atrophy. International competitors began to offer ships at dramatically lower prices. The U.S. now produces just 0.1% of global commercial tonnage. While China launches hundreds of ships, the U.S. struggles to produce in the single digits. This is a strategic vulnerability of immense proportions. The ghosts of the arsenal of democracy serve as a stark warning. The capacity to build ships on a massive scale is a national asset that, once lost, is incredibly difficult to reconstitute. It is a challenge that America must confront if it hopes to remain a maritime power. At the heart of any discussion about American shipbuilding is the Jones Act. This law mandates that goods transported between U.S. ports must be carried on U.S.-built, U.S.-owned, and U.S.-crewed ships. The original intent was to maintain a strong domestic merchant marine for national defense and economic security. Supporters argue that without it, the U.S. shipbuilding industry would cease to exist. However, the Jones Act is a double-edged sword, and critics argue that its protectionist nature is a primary cause of the industry's inefficiency and high costs. Without pressure to compete with shipyards in China or South Korea, U.S. builders haven't made the same investments in automation. A Jones Act-compliant vessel can cost 4 to 5 times as much as one built in Asia. This premium is ultimately passed on to American consumers. It keeps the U.S. shipbuilding industry alive, but unable to truly thrive or compete on the world stage. The cost crisis in American shipbuilding is starkly illustrated in its naval programs. The USS Zumwalt exemplifies this issue. Originally envisioned as a class of 32 ships, the program became a case study in spiraling costs. The order was slashed to just 3. The final cost for the 3-ship Zumwalt class is estimated to be around $24 billion. The U.S. naval shipbuilding industrial base has consolidated, reducing competition. The result is a U.S. Navy that is forced to pay more for less. China leverages its shipyards to mass-produce warships at a fraction of the cost. Can the United States continue to afford the Navy it needs when its industrial base produces ships at such a high cost? The American and Chinese shipbuilding industries face a significant cost disparity. A Jones Act-compliant ship built in the U.S. can be 5 times more expensive than a foreign-built one. Labor costs are a major factor. American shipyard worker wages are substantially higher than in China. Chinese shipyards operate on a massive scale, securing bulk discounts. Chinese government subsidies create an uneven market. This aid depresses prices, pricing American shipyards out of the international market. This creates a two-tiered market, a price-driven international market and a protected U.S. market sustained by the Jones Act. This disconnect has led to the collapse of American shipbuilding as a global force. The collapse of American shipbuilding carries a profound human cost. Communities and people who once formed the backbone of this industry have been deeply affected. From New England to the Gulf Coast, the decline led to the loss of skilled jobs. A generation of shipbuilders was lost, creating a break in the transmission of knowledge. Rebuilding the workforce and inspiring a new generation is essential. Without this human investment, policies and funding will lack the skilled hands to build upon them. For years, the decline of American shipbuilding was a quiet crisis, overlooked by Washington. As China's maritime power grew, a shift began to occur. The quiet crisis became a loud alarm, demanding a response. A new consensus emerged. Revitalizing U.S. shipbuilding was an urgent need. It became a matter of fundamental national security. The abyss between American capacity and Chinese dominance was finally measured. The dawn of this new consensus was a critical turning point, marking the beginning of a proactive effort to reverse decades of industrial decay. The Trump administration initiated a shift in United States trade policy towards China. The strategy was built on the premise that free trade had unfairly disadvantaged American industries. In 2018, sweeping tariffs were imposed on Chinese goods. This signaled a confrontational approach to China's unfair trade practices and state subsidies. The tariffs were designed to make Chinese goods more expensive, encouraging domestic sourcing. The administration framed the issue as one of national security, linking economic security to military strength. The policy elevated the issue and built momentum for targeted industrial policies. It opened the door for a more interventionist approach to industrial strategy. This acknowledged a long-term strategic competition with China where the industrial base was critical. Building on the awareness of the shipbuilding crisis, the Energizing American Shipbuilding Act and the Shipbuilding and Harbor Infrastructure Act took shape with bipartisan support. These bills required a percentage of domestically produced oil and liquefied natural gas exports be transported on U.S.-built, U.S.-flagged vessels, creating guaranteed demand for American shipyards. Supporters argued this would counter Chinese subsidies, bolster national security, create manufacturing jobs, and revitalize communities. Though not yet law, their introduction demonstrates a new consensus in Washington and lays a marker for future maritime policy. While legislative proposals capture attention, the Maritime Administration, or MARAD, is playing a key role in the nation's shipbuilding revival. With new funding, MARAD is implementing programs to recapitalize the nation's sealift fleet, support domestic shipyards, and train American mariners. A critical mission is overseeing the National Security Multi-Mission Vessel, or NSMV program. The NSMV program was designed to help sustain the commercial shipbuilding industrial base. MARAD also administers the Small Shipyard Grant Program, providing millions to smaller shipyards. By helping smaller players modernize, the program strengthens the entire shipbuilding ecosystem. This reflects a sophisticated understanding that rebuilding an industry requires targeted programs. It's being translated into practical action aimed at reconstructing the pillars of maritime strength. New policies and programs represent a serious American response to shipbuilding decline. There is recognition of the problem and a growing portfolio of plans to address it. The journey from policy to steel is long, expensive, and difficult. The first hurdle is cost. Recapitalizing shipyards will require billions in investment. The second obstacle is human capital. The United States faces a massive skills gap in shipbuilding. Ultimately, the American response is a race against time. Turning plans into a thriving shipbuilding industry will be the true test. China's shipbuilding dominance has forced a realization in Washington and allied capitals. The United States can't face this challenge alone. The new imperative is to leverage America's global network of alliances to counterbalance Beijing's maritime might. Key allies like Japan and South Korea possess advanced shipyards and technology. By deepening cooperation, the United States can tap into their capacity and create a powerful bloc of democratic shipbuilding nations, ensuring global maritime supply chains are not wholly dependent on a single, authoritarian power. By fostering a diverse shipbuilding ecosystem, the collective West can mitigate risk. 21st century competition is about industrial capacity. The United States must act as the leader of a powerful maritime coalition. In shipbuilding, America's key Pacific allies are Japan and South Korea. These nations have been titans of the industry. They remain global leaders in building complex, high-value vessels. Deepening the industrial partnership with Tokyo and Seoul is a logical first step for the United States. They are the world's other great shipbuilding powers. A key area of focus is naval maintenance and repair, with the U.S. increasingly looking to allied shipyards in Japan and South Korea. Beyond maintenance, there is growing discussion about co-production and technology sharing. This trilateral industrial cooperation sends a powerful strategic message. It demonstrates a deep economic and industrial partnership. The three nations can create a more resilient and competitive alternative. Section 3. The AUKUS Connection. Submarines today, shipyards tomorrow. The AUKUS Security Pact between Australia, the United Kingdom, and the United States, announced in 2021, aims to help Australia acquire a fleet of nuclear-powered submarines. This multi-billion-dollar undertaking represents deep technological trust and industrial collaboration. While focused on submarines, it has profound implications for the Allied shipbuilding industrial base. AUKUS is a joint industrial capacity-building project requiring synchronized effort across 3 continents. It involves building a new class of submarine, the SSN AUKUS, in British and Australian shipyards, necessitating facility upgrades. AUKUS is a response to China's growing military power, enhancing Allied undersea warfare capability in the Indo-Pacific. The investment will revitalize industrial bases, creating jobs and fostering a new generation of skilled workers. This shared workforce will be a strategic asset, a counterweight to China's naval industry. The AUKUS model could serve as a template for cooperation in other areas of shipbuilding and maritime security. China's shipbuilding dominance poses a challenge not only to the Pacific, but also to European nations. Countries like Germany, Italy, France, and Spain have seen their industries decline due to Chinese competition. This has sparked concerns about over-reliance on China and the erosion of strategic industrial autonomy. The US and EU can collaborate against China's practices, set green shipping standards, and develop smart ships. Cooperation is also crucial in the naval sphere, ensuring the collective security of Allied naval forces. By aligning strategies, the US and Europe can demonstrate their commitment to preserving maritime capabilities. The path forward for the United States and its allies lies in weaving these disparate threads of cooperation into a coherent and powerful coalition of capabilities. This is not about creating a formal, centralized shipbuilding alliance to rival China's state-owned monolith. Rather, it's about fostering a flexible, resilient, and interconnected network of democratic industrial power. The strategy involves each partner contributing its unique strengths: American high-end naval technology, South Korean commercial efficiency, Japanese engineering excellence, Australian resource access, and European specialization in complex vessels. By pooling these diverse capabilities, the coalition can create a competitive ecosystem that China's top-down model will find difficult to replicate. A key element of this strategy is burden sharing and specialization. It's neither feasible nor desirable for every allied nation to rebuild a domestic capacity for every type of ship. Instead, allies can strategically coordinate their industrial efforts. For example, the United States might focus its resources on high-end naval combatants like aircraft carriers and submarines, while relying more on South Korean and Japanese yards for large commercial vessels or auxiliary naval ships. European partners could continue to lead in cruise ships and complex offshore vessels. This approach allows for greater efficiency, avoids wasteful duplication of effort, and plays to the comparative advantage of each nation, strengthening the collective industrial base in a more cost-effective manner. Building this coalition also requires a unified stance on fair trade and investment. The United States and its partners must work in lockstep to challenge China's unfair subsidy practices and to screen Chinese state-backed investments in their critical maritime infrastructure such as ports and shipyards. By establishing common standards for transparency and security, the coalition can protect its collective industrial base from predatory economic statecraft. This creates a market for nations that value security, reliability, and adherence to international law, offering a clear alternative to the often opaque deals associated with China's Belt and Road Initiative and its related maritime projects. Ultimately, this international strategy is an acknowledgement that the era of unchallenged American industrial supremacy is over. The new era demands a collaborative approach to geostrategic competition. By building a coalition of maritime industrial power, the United States and its allies can create a formidable counterweight to China's ambitions. This network, founded on shared democratic values and mutual trust, can work to ensure that the world's oceans remain free, open, and served by a diverse and resilient global fleet. It is honestly a long-term, complex endeavor, but it may be the only viable path to ensuring a stable and secure maritime future in the 21st century. The global shift in shipbuilding has real-world consequences for communities. In nations where shipbuilding declined, like the United States, the socio-economic impact has been devastating. The loss of jobs has hollowed out entire towns. Conversely, in China, the industry's growth has been a powerful engine of social and economic transformation, lifting people out of poverty. This divergence has created a critical skills gap. The tacit knowledge has been broken. Without a skilled workforce, any plan to revive the industry is destined to fail. The concentration of shipbuilding in one nation also raises concerns about labor standards and worker welfare. The human element involves fundamental questions about the quality and dignity of work on a global scale. The dominance of one nation in shipbuilding creates economic ripple effects. A healthy shipbuilding industry supports a vast ecosystem of suppliers. When a country loses shipbuilding capacity, this entire domestic supply chain withers, leading to job losses. This concentration of production in China has implications for global finance and insurance. The financing of new ships is increasingly dominated by Chinese state-backed banks. The nation that builds the ships often sets the technological standards for the future. Nations that have fallen behind in shipbuilding may find themselves locked out of these new high-growth markets. When a nation becomes dependent on its competitor for vessels, it creates a profound vulnerability. This economic dependency grants a powerful, non-military lever of influence. Shipbuilding is a heavy industry with a significant environmental footprint, and its concentration in China means a concentration of its environmental impacts. The process of building a ship is incredibly resource-intensive. It consumes vast quantities of steel, which requires energy-intensive mining and smelting processes that generate significant carbon emissions. The construction process itself uses enormous amounts of electricity, much of which in China is still generated from coal, the most carbon-intensive fossil fuel. The painting of massive hulls releases volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, into the atmosphere, while sandblasting and other surface treatments can create air and water pollution if not managed with the strictest environmental controls. The end of a ship's life also presents a major environmental challenge. The process of shipbreaking or dismantling old vessels to recycle their steel and other materials is notoriously hazardous. For many years, this dangerous work has been concentrated in South Asian countries like Bangladesh and India, often with lax environmental and safety regulations. However, as China's own fleet ages, and as it seeks to control the entire life cycle of its products, it is also becoming a major player in ship recycling. The environmental standards applied in this process are critical, as improper dismantling can release asbestos, heavy metals, oil sludge and other toxic substances directly into coastal ecosystems with devastating effects. China's domestic environmental policies are therefore a matter of global concern. While the Chinese government has declared a war on pollution and has made significant strides in improving its environmental regulations, the sheer scale of its industrial output presents a monumental challenge. The enforcement of these regulations across thousands of factories and shipyards can be uneven. The world's reliance on Chinese shipbuilding means it is also reliant on the effectiveness of China's environmental governance. A failure to control industrial pollution in China has direct consequences, not only for its own population, but for global air and water quality, as pollutants can travel across oceans and continents. This concentration also creates a paradox in the global quest for sustainability. While Western nations implement increasingly strict environmental laws that raise the cost of manufacturing, they are simultaneously offshoring their industrial production to a country where the environmental enforcement may be different. This can lead to a phenomenon known as carbon leakage, where emissions are not eliminated but simply moved from one part of the world to another. The environmental footprint of a ship is a global responsibility, yet the current industrial alignment means the primary burden of managing that footprint for new construction falls disproportionately on one nation's shoulders, with implications for the entire planet. The global shipping industry is on the cusp of a monumental transformation, driven by the urgent need to decarbonize. International regulations are tightening, forcing a move away from heavy fuel oil towards cleaner alternatives like LNG, methanol, ammonia, and eventually hydrogen. This green transition is not just an environmental issue, it is the next great competitive battleground in the shipbuilding industry. The nations and companies that can master the complex technologies required to build these new green-fueled vessels will dominate the market for decades to come. This technological shift offers both a profound challenge and a potential opportunity for shipbuilding nations around the world. China has clearly identified this transition as a strategic priority and is moving aggressively to establish itself as the world's leading builder of green ships. Backed by massive state investment in research and development, Chinese shipyards are rapidly developing the expertise and infrastructure needed to handle alternative fuels. They are already securing the majority of global orders for dual-fuel vessels capable of running on LNG and methanol. By positioning themselves at the forefront of this technological wave, they aim to solidify their market dominance, moving from being the world's low-cost builder to its high-tech leader, making their position even more unassailable for potential competitors. For the United States and its allies, this presents a critical juncture. While they have largely lost the market for conventional ships, the green transition could offer a narrow window of opportunity to re-enter the game. Western nations often lead in fundamental research and cutting-edge engineering. By focusing investment and policy support on leapfrog technologies, such as developing the first truly viable ammonia-powered engines or pioneering onboard carbon capture systems, they could potentially carve out a niche in the high-value segments of the future green fleet. This would require a concerted industrial strategy, uniting public and private sector efforts in a national mission similar to the race to the moon. However, the challenge is immense. China's existing industrial scale gives it a massive advantage in deploying new technologies quickly and affordably. While a Western company might develop a new green technology, it may find that the only shipyards capable of integrating it into a vessel at scale and at a competitive price are located in China. This creates a risk that even Western innovation will ultimately end up reinforcing Chinese industrial power. The green transition is therefore a high-stakes race where the winners will not only reap huge economic rewards, but will also control the infrastructure of a sustainable global economy, shaping the future of trade and energy for the 21st century. The world's reliance on China for shipbuilding has created a powerful imbalance. Beijing can now use its shipyards as leverage, rewarding allies, punishing rivals, and shaping global alignments without firing a shot. In a crisis, nations dependent on Chinese-built ships could find their fleets grounded by withheld parts or hidden vulnerabilities. This dependency pressures countries to align with China diplomatically, eroding international unity. Each ship launched from China is more than a vessel. It's a tool of influence. The concentration of shipbuilding power threatens the free, open maritime order that has prevailed for decades. The price of efficiency is a world less free, less resilient, and more contested. China's shipbuilding dominance is now the defining reality of the global maritime landscape. Through massive investment and strategic policy, China controls over half the world's commercial tonnage and is rapidly expanding its navy. This was no accident. It was a deliberate, decades-long project, using subsidies and state-backed loans to reshape the market. Meanwhile, the U.S. shipbuilding industry has withered, creating a dangerous strategic vulnerability. The world has entered a new era. Industrial power and global influence have shifted decisively eastward. Every nation that relies on open seas must now reckon with this transformed reality. The question is no longer what happened, but how the world will respond. The U.S. faces a stark choice: revitalize its shipbuilding or accept maritime irrelevance. New policies signal a shift, but rebuilding will require decades of investment and unwavering political will. The biggest challenge is people. America must restore skilled trades and inspire a new generation of shipbuilders. Success demands more than money. It requires a cultural shift and national resolve. The test is historic. Will the U.S. reclaim industrial sovereignty or remain dependent on its chief rival? The answer will define America's role as a world power. The crossroads is here: action or decline. No single nation can match China's scale, but a coalition can. The US, Japan, South Korea, Australia, and Europe together form a powerful counterweight. By combining strengths, technology, efficiency, engineering, they can build a resilient, advanced alternative to China's model. Initiatives like AUKUS and Allied shipyard cooperation are already strengthening this network. Success depends on overcoming rivalries and forging true partnerships. This alliance transforms the story from decline to collective resilience. The West's best hope is unity, leveraging shared values to ensure the world isn't reliant on one nation's ships. Looking to 2050, China's shipbuilding dominance will likely endure. The West's goal isn't to outproduce China, but to build a competitive high-tech alternative through allied cooperation. A revitalized U.S. sector, integrated with allies, could lead in advanced green vessels, even if China dominates bulk production. This future requires sustained effort and political will. Failure means total dependency on China. The next decade is decisive. The seeds planted now will shape the maritime world of 2050. The challenge is immense, demanding patience and unity. The voyage is long, but the outcome is still in our hands. The true contest between the US and China is unfolding in the world's shipyards, not on battlefields. Shipbuilding is now a measure of national strength and global influence. China's long-term strategy has turned its shipyards into tools of economic statecraft. The US and its allies are awakening to this reality, recognizing that industrial power is inseparable from security. The challenge is to rebuild not just shipyards, but the will and skill to compete. The outcome of this industrial contest will shape the 21st century. The nation that builds the ships will shape the future.